Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav and we are continuing to learn halachos Sukkah. Mirz Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Kuf Aleph Amid Aleph. We pick up on the very bottom of Daf Kuf Amid Beis in Siman Tuf Reish Lamed Zayin in the midst of Sif Gimel. So we have been discussing the halacha of a Sukkah Gezula, a stolen Sukkah. And as we've mentioned before, there's a very interesting dichotomy when it comes to the question of a stolen sukkah, or a sukkah that doesn't belong to you. On the one hand, we have a pasuk that says, Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu b'sukkos. And if you take a look at Daf Kuf Amid Beis in Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Hay, the Mishnah Berurah told us, it's from that pasuk that we know you could be yotza with a sukkah she'ula. You could be yotza with a borrowed sukkah. A sukkah does not have to be yours. It's not like a lulav. By a lulav, we darshan the pasuk says, L'kachtem lachem, you should take for yourselves. We darshan from the word lachem that the daled minim have to belong to you. We don't have a similar drasha really by sukkah. We don't have a requirement that the sukkah has to be yours. And again, we know that from the pasuk that says, Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu b'sukkos. And the Chavetz Chaim told us the implication of that pasuk is that Gans Klal Yisrael could be yotza with one sukkah. How could Gans Klal Yisrael be yotza with one sukkah? They'll take turns using it. Obviously, they can't all have a chashava share of ownership in one sukkah. One sukkah is not valuable enough for every member of Klal Yisrael to own a shava pruta. So obviously, you don't have to own the sukkah that you're in. However, on the other hand, we do have another pasuk, and that is we have a pasuk that says Chag HaSukkos taseh lecha. You should make a sukkah for yourself, and there is room from that pasuk to make a drasha similar to the drasha that we make by Daled Minim or L'kachtem lachem. L'kachtem lachem, we say it has to be yours. Chag HaSukkos taseh lecha. The Gemara could have made a drasha that the sukkah has to be yours, but the Gemara does not. Instead, the drasha that the Gemara makes is from the lecha, Chag HaSukkos taseh lecha. We learn out that you cannot be yotza with a sukkah gezula. So let's understand, the problem by a sukkah gezula is not that the sukkah is not yours. The problem by a sukkah gezula is that it's a sukkah gezula. Why can't you be yotza? Because you can't be yotza with a stolen sukkah. However, the sukkah does not have to be yours. You could use a borrowed sukkah. Now in Sif Gimel, we started to discuss the halacha of the sukkah gzula, and right away the Mechaber told us sukkah gzula kshera. And the Chavetz Chaim pointed out that that's not really 100% precise. Like I just said, there is a psul of a sukkah gzula, Chag HaSukkos taseh lecha, lemu'ute sukkah gzula. So there is a problem with the sukkah gzula, but the Mechaber went on to explain when he says that a sukkah gzula is keshera, he meant a certain scenario. The scenario over there in Sif Gimel was, you went into somebody else's backyard, somebody is sitting with his family in his sukkah in his backyard, you went ahead, you evicted the fellow with his family from the sukkah, and you went and you sat down and you made your suda in his sukkah. In that case, the Mechaber said you are yotza. Why are you yotza? Because it's not a sukkah gzula. Why isn't it a sukkah gzula? Because karka ain't an exelis. You cannot steal real property. The ground, real estate, cannot be stolen. You can't take it and physically remove it from somebody's rishus and bring it into your rishus. It was his backyard, it is his backyard, it will continue to be his backyard until the day he sells it. Karka is becheskas balei harishonim. It remains in the chazaka of the person who owns it. So karka ain't an exelis, and since the sukkah is mechubal karka, the sukkah gets the same halacha as the karka. It's ain't an exelis, and therefore we can't call this a sukkah gzula. And since it's not a sukkah gzula, technically speaking, you are yotza the mitzvah of sukkah by using that sukkah. Then the Ramah went on, and the Ramah said, certainly you should not use a sukkah, somebody else's sukkah, l'chatchila, l'yeshev adu b'sukkahs chaveri shaloi midaitoi. You shouldn't use somebody else's sukkah without his consent. He said, Kol shkein imdaita legazla. Certainly in the scenario of the Mechaber, certainly this is very much not l'chatchila, but technically speaking, you are yotza. Now let's go to the bottom line of Kuf Amud Beis, where the Ramah mentions another interesting manifestation of this concept of a Sukkah Gzula. All the way on the bottom line of Kuf Amud Beis in the Ramah, near the end of the line, says the Ramah, V'chein similarly, Lo yikatzitzu Yisrael haschach ba'atzmam. If a Yid wants to go and he wants to buy schach, so let's say he knows that there's a farmer or somebody who has orchards next door to him, and he knows that the guy's always pruning his trees, he has lots of branches, and he wants to go buy schach. So he goes over to the fellow and he says, look, do you mind if I go into the orchard over here, or if I go into your forest, and I have my sawzall, I have my chainsaw, and I know how to prune trees, I want to go ahead and I want to cut schach for myself. Is that okay? Says the Ramah, Lo yikatzitzu Yisrael haschach ba'atzmam. Do not go into a non-Jew's property, even with permission, even with intent maybe to purchase the schach. Or the non-Jew says, sure, go ahead, cut whatever you want. I have 5 acres of bamboo. Cut as much bamboo as you want, it's all yours. Says the Ramah, do not go cut that schach yourself. Ella yiknu aisam me'ovdei kechavim. Rather, what you should do is you should purchase it from the non-Jew and let the non-Jew go ahead and cut it and deliver it to you. Do not go ahead and cut it yourself. What's the problem over here? The problem over here is we are afraid of the possibility that this land was stolen by the non-Jew. Now, if this land was stolen by the non-Jew, then all the bamboo that's growing in that land is stolen property. Now let's remember, we said karka ein an exelis. The property itself really cannot get the status of stolen property because you cannot steal real estate. So let's follow through what's going to happen over here. The non-Jew stole this property. While the property itself and whatever's mechubar lekarka, so the bamboo that's growing over here, all has a din of karka ein an exelis. None of that is called stolen property as of this moment. Now the Yid comes, Yaakov Shmerel comes, and he goes over to Tony, the owner of the land, and he says, do you mind if I go cut, some bamboo for my Sukkah? And Tony says, sure, go right ahead. So Yaakov Shmerel goes with his chainsaw, and he cuts down bamboo. The minute he cuts down the bamboo is no longer mechubar lekarka. The minute he cuts down the bamboo, now the bamboo is gezula. Now it's stolen bamboo. Since it's stolen bamboo, you cannot use it for a sukkah. So, that's why the Ramah says, the Yid should not go himself and cut down the bamboo. Because the minute he cuts the bamboo becomes stolen property, and now it's schach gezula, it's stolen schach, which cannot be used for a sukkah. What's the eitzah, says the Ramah? The eitzah, the Ramah says, is go to Tony, buy the schach from Tony, let Tony cut down the bamboo, and let Tony deliver the bamboo to you. Why does that help? The reason that helps is because, again, let's follow through what happens. While the bamboo is attached to the ground, karka ein an exelis. Tony goes ahead and he cuts the bamboo. You know what happens when Tony separates the bamboo from the ground? Now it becomes gezula. Now it becomes stolen property. But another thing also happens. Yiyush is now chal. You see, the person that Tony stole this land from was miyayish. He gave up on getting his land back. He gave up on getting his bamboo back. Tony's been using this land and been harvesting bamboo for 15 years. The previous owner of the land and of the bamboo, he was miyayish. But the yiyush was never able to be chal. The yiyush never took place. Why? Because yiyush cannot take place on karka. Because karka ain't an exelis. So yiyush can't take place. But when Tony cuts the bamboo, now yiyush takes place. Okay, so now we have stolen bamboo that the owner was miyayish on. Now Tony sells the bamboo to Yaakov Shmerel. Okay, Tony sells the bamboo to Yaakov Shmerel. Now you have another factor in change of ownership. you have Yush. That's step one. The owner was the real owner was Miyayish. Once the real owner is Miyayish, the property already begins to move out of his ownership. So again, Tony goes, cuts the bamboo. Now Yush takes place. Now Tony takes it and sells it to Yankel Shmerel. Yankel Shmerel takes it, makes a kinyan on it. Now there's Shina Rishus. Now there was also a transfer of ownership from the middleman, from Tony to Yankel Shmerel. Two ingredients together, Yush followed by Shina Rishus. Now Yankel Shmerel, the Yisrael, could be koinit, and now it's not called Tzchach Gezula, because you have the combination of Yush and Shina Rishus. And the Shina Rishus has to come after the Yush. The Yush cannot become before the Shina Rishus. First you have to have the Yush, then you have to have the Shina Rishus. By the way, that's why, you might ask me a question, why can't we do like this? Why can't Yankel Shmerel go to Tony and tell Tony, listen, I want to buy 300 pieces of bamboo. So he'll pay Tony 300, he'll pay him the money for 300 pieces of bamboo, and now that's Shina Rishus. I made Shina Rishus, I made a purchase. I went there and I gave him money for this bamboo. And now I'll go ahead, now Yankel Shmerel will go ahead and cut it. And as soon as he cuts it, the Yush of the original owner will be Chal. So you'll ask me again, I have Yush and Shina Rishus. I had Shina Rishus when I made the purchase. We're not going to get into whether or not you could be kind of the bamboo with kesef while it's still attached to the ground. Is karka niknas bekesef or is it not? Maybe they made a kinyan chalipin, whatever it is. But they made a kinyan. So you'll ask me, I don't understand. I had Shina Rishus, and then when Yankel Shmerel cut it, I had Yush. That doesn't work, because the Yush has to come first, and then the Shina Rishus. So again, the guy goes ahead, and the guy cuts it, and then he sells the cut bamboo to you. So first he cuts it, and that makes the Yush Bichal. Then he sells it to you, that's Shina Rishus. Now the Yid is kind with Yush and Shina Rishus, and now it's not Tzchach Gezula. Now, you'll ask me another question. What happens if the Yid cuts it? Let's say the Yid goes into Tony's office, and he says, look, I want 300 pieces of bamboo. I want to buy 300 pieces of bamboo. So Tony says, come back next week. I'll have workers next week who are going to be able to harvest the bamboo, and then I'll sell it to you. So Yankel Shmerel says, I need the sukkah. I need the bamboo now. I need it for my sukkah. The holiday is now. Today is Erev Yom Tov. Tony says, well, I don't have any workers. So Yankel Shmerel says, I'll tell you what. I'll go into the field, and I'll cut it. And then I'll buy it from you. So now Yankel Shmerel goes into the field. He cuts the bamboo. Now the Yush could be Chal. And then he goes ahead and he buys it. And now you have the Shina Rishus. Would that work? I think the answer is that does not work. And I think the reason it does not work is because the Yush cannot be Chal when Yankel Shmerel goes ahead and cuts the bamboo, because Be'isura Asil Yadeh. He wasn't allowed to cut it. It was stolen. It belonged to somebody else. I think he wasn't allowed to cut it, and therefore Be'isura Asil Yadeh, and the Yush won't be Chal. I'm not sure. I didn't go and research that prat 100%, but that's the suspicion that I have. Okay, so here we see the Ramah, again, just to encapsulate what was said over here. The Ramah says, do not go into Tony's fields and cut the bamboo yourself. Instead, go to Tony, buy schach from Tony, and let Tony go ahead and cut it and sell it to you when it's cut. That way there'll be Yush when he cuts it, Shina Rishus when he sells it to you, and now you'll be kained and it won't be stolen. Schach. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah inside. So we have the Mishnah Berurah near the bottom of Kuf Amud Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Aleph. Lo yikatzitzu. The Yid should not cut miyar shal akum. Do not cut the schach from the non-Jew's forest. Afilu midas akum. Even with the knowledge and the consent of the non-Jew. The tam din zeh upratav, and the rationale for this halacha and the details of this halacha, yispar lekamon b'simin taf reish mem tes sif aleph b'haga. They are explained later on in the halachos of Daled Minim in Siman taf reish mem tes sif aleph, and that's because it's over there in the halachos of Daled Minim where the Ramah discusses the same exact halacha in the context of Daled Minim. Do not go into the non-Jews forest and cut aravos. Do not go into the non-Jews forest and cut a lulav. All the same rationale, because stolen Daled Minim you can't be the mitzvah with. Now, this, I don't know if it's still Negea. I know in years past it definitely was Negea. Sometimes the city comes along and the city says you could go into the park and you could cut in certain areas, you could cut branches. So now you have permission, the local residents have permission from the municipality, they have permission from the malchus to go ahead and cut eitzim. Is that okay? So the Mishnah Berurah says, in a time, in a locale, where the local residents have permission from the Malchus to go ahead and cut, then there's no problem at all if you go ahead and you cut schach for yourself, because the Malchus has given you permission, and Dina de Malchusa Dina. You should not go into the forest, into the non-Jews forest, and cut schach for yourself. Rather, you should purchase it when it's cut from the non-Jew. V'hainu, what this means that you should purchase it from the non-Jew is that the non-Jew should be the one who cuts it. He should cut it, and he should sell it to you cut. Now it turns out that if the non-Jew stole these branches from the forest, this is a different case. Ayin b'bir halacha. The bir halacha is going to discuss over here what happens if a non-Jew stole branches, and now he's selling you stolen branches. That you could see a very interesting bir halacha. Bir halacha dibra maschil el yiknu oisam me'akum. Another possible eitzah over here would be, if a Yid went into the non-Jew's property, cut the bamboo, and then gave it to another Yid, Gam Kain Shari, that would also be okay, to have a Yish B'yad Arisha in HaKoitzetz, because you're accomplishing the same thing. Ruvain goes into Tony's field, Ruvain cuts the bamboo, now the Yish is Chal. Now Ruvain goes ahead and gives it to Shimon. Shimon is getting it after Yish and Shina Rishus. It's Shina Rishus when Ruvain gives it to Shimon. Yush happened when Ruvain cut it. I think over here you don't have the problem of Be'isura Asil Yadeh, because by Shimon it's not Be'isura Asil Yadeh. You have a Yush B'yad Arisha HaKoitzetz, V'Shina Rishus B'yad Hasheni. Okay, let's continue the Ramah on the top line of Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Ramah said, you don't go into the forest and cut the bamboo yourself. Buy the cut bamboo from the non-Jew, let the non-Jew cut it. And the Ramah explains, the Chol Gezel ein oisid bimenu Sukkah lechatchila. Anything that was acquired through Gezel lechatchila, we do not use that for a Sukkah. Mishnah Berurah is cut Gimel, the Chol Gezel, Ritzaynai Loimar. What the Ramah is hinting at here is the Shema Gazala Akum Akarka. This is what we've been explaining. The whole potential problem over here is maybe the non-Jews stole the karka. However, the Chavetz Chaim does say, if you don't have another eitzah, if the only way you're going to be able to get schach for your sukkah is if you go into Tony's yard and cut the bamboo yourself, you are allowed to cut it yourself. Mibal hakarka, as long as you do get the rishus from Tony. If Tony gives you his consent, if Tony agrees that you could go cut bamboo from his field, then b'diavad, if you have no other eitzah, you could go cut it yourself and you could use it for schach, fa'afilahu akum, even if we're dealing with a non-Jew. And the reason this is true is because, let's remember, our whole problem over here is only a chash. We don't know for sure that this land was stolen. It's a chash that maybe it was stolen. So, okay, if you could do something to take care of that potential chash, matoiv manoim. But if you have no other eitzah, you could go cut schach, so you should have schach for your sukkah. Ois cotton yodalid ein oisin. The Ramah said the chol gezel ein oisin mimenu sukkah lechatchila. Anything that was stolen we don't use for a sukkah lechatchila. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton yodalid ve'ein levarech leishev basukah. And you would not make a bracha of leishev basukah on any sukkah where you're using materials which is a problem of gezel. Umikol makom. Nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, le'inyan din hakoydim b'sif cotton yud gimel. B'negeya to the halacha, the Chavetz Chaim says, that I just told you in Sif Yud Gimel. B'makom she'i efsher shemuter liktzoitz ba'atzmai. I just told you, the Chavetz Chaim says, that despite the Ramah's misgivings of you going into a non-Jew's field and cutting the schach yourself, I told you in Sif Yud Gimel that b'makom she'i efsher, if you have no other way to get schach, you're allowed to do this. So now says the Chavetz Chaim, b'negeh to that halacha, even though I just told you that you don't make a bracha normally when you're using materials that are gezel, efsher shemuter levarech b'medinais seinu, he says in our medinais, it's possible that you could make a bracha even if you cut the schach yourself. Sheroivek harkoi sheyesh laha'akum nite lahem midin hamalchus. Because the vast majority of property that's owned in our Medinos, and this was true, the Chavetz Chaim was talking about in his area in Radin, and I would venture to say that the same thing is true over here. Ownership of land is very highly regulated. You want to purchase land, there's title searches, there's title insurance, they search out every possible lien against the land that you have. If a person owns land and he has title to a piece of land, then mitam dina de malchusa, that land is his. And I don't think there's much room for a chash when you go around nowadays to say that that land is stolen. A person that has a piece of land, generally speaking, it means he has title to the land. If he has title to the land, it's usually clean title. And then mitam dina de malchusa, it's owned. He's the one who owns it. V'dina de malchusa dina. Now you want to go ahead and argue that the ownership is not halachic ownership? It is halachic ownership. You know why? Excuse me, because dina de malchusa dina. So that's why it's halachic ownership. V'ayin l'kamon b'simin tafrei samach daled b'taz v'hetakti dvar pai b'bir halacha. Okay. Now let's go to the second line in the Shulchan Aruch. So far, what we've seen over here in Siv Gimel is despite the fact that we do make a drasha of Chag HaSukkah is Tasa Lecha, and we say that the word Lecha is Limu'ute Sukkah Gzula, so far we have not really come up with a case where we have a Sukkah Gzula that is really puzzled. Right? We've talked so far about the guy who evicts somebody from his sukkah, karka and an exelis. We said over here you shouldn't really go into somebody else's forest and into a non-Jew's forest and cut the schach by yourself. B'diavad, it's okay. So far we're still talking about sukkah gzula, but we still don't have the sukkah gzula that's puzzled. So now the Mechaber comes with another case. Second line, Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph. Vim gazal eitzim. We know that 2x4 is very expensive. The last couple of months, 2x4s that used to be $3 a piece, $11, $12 a piece at Home Depot for a 2x4. So vim gazal eitzim. Somebody went ahead now and he stole wood. He stole 2x4s. Vim gazal eitzim v'asa mehem sukkah. He stole wood, and with the stolen wood, he built a sukkah. Says the Mechaber, af al pi shaloi chibron. Even if you did not take your impact driver and screw all of these pieces of wood together to make a sukkah. So let's say we're talking about somebody stole 2x3s, he stole 2x4s, and all he did was he laid them on top of his sukkah to support the bamboo. So he wasn't matriach, and we'll see why this is important. He wasn't matriach, he didn't work very hard to go install these 2x4s. So, aval bishaloi chibron, v'loi shina behem klum, nor did he make any changes to them. He didn't go ahead and steal sheets of plywood and then spend time with an orbital sander going ahead and sanding them down. He didn't go ahead and stain them. He didn't polyurethane them. All he did was he stole some 2x4s and put them on top of his sukkah. So he didn't screw them together. He didn't do any work on them. There's no shinoi maisa. He didn't improve them in any way. Yotza. You're still Yotza. We still have not arrived at a Sukkah Gzula where you're not Yotza. Why are you yoitza? So the Mechaber explains, and here we have to put in the letter shin. The Mishnah Berurah tells us that there's a typo over here. She takanas chachamim, because there's a very famous takanas chachamim, takanas hashavim, or in the lashon of the Gemara, takanas merish, the takana of a beam. Takanas chachamim she'ein lebala eitzim elo demei eitzim bilvad. We have something called a very interesting takana, takanas hashavim. What is takanas hashavim? Somebody wants to go ahead and he wants to build an extension on his house. And the main beam of his extension is going to be a 22-foot long micro-lam beam. And he needs this micro-lam beam, and he didn't make his cheshbon when he figured how much the extension was going to cost him. He didn't realize how the price of lumber has gotten totally out of control, and he didn't realize that this micro-lam beam was going to cost him a small fortune. So he doesn't know what to do. He can't pay for the micro-lam beam. The lumber yard is not delivering it. But his neighbor has a 22-foot micro-lam beam sitting in his backyard for his extension. So he goes in and he tells the contractor, you know what, there's a beautiful micro-lam beam right over there. Go take it, we'll use that beam and install it in my house. So the contractors take the micro-lam beam and they install it at his house. Now, really, the halacha min HaTorah, the halacha min Daraisa, v'heshiv hagzela shagazal. You stole a micro-lam beam, you have to return that micro-lam beam be'en. You have to return it the way it is, the way it was. So really, midaraisa, what this fellow would have to do now is he would have to remove the micro-lam beam from his house, and he would have to go v'heshiv hagzela shagazal, return the micro-lam beam to his next door neighbor. What that's going to do, the Chazal said, is very simple. That is going to discourage a person from doing tshuva. The person is going to be sitting there before Yom Kippur. He's going to make a cheshbon hanefesh before Rosh Hashanah, and he's going to say, Gezel. You know, Gezel is one of the worst averis. Take a look in Ne'ilah. Laman nechta me'oshek yodenu. How much we speak about Gezel. It's amazing. Most people don't walk around thinking that they're Gazlanim. Yet we see in the Tfilos of Yom Kippur how much time we spend speaking about Gezel. And that's because, unfortunately, it's very easy to be nichshal in the Avera of Gezel. We have a lot of Gezel. You know, it's a little money here, a little money there. We didn't make an accurate cheshbon. We forgot something. We overcharged this, that. There's a lot of, unfortunately, there's really a lot of opportunity for Gezel. So this person makes a cheshbon hanefesh. He says, I know I stole a micro-lam beam, but what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to take my house apart? I can't. So I can't do tshuva. So the Chachamim made what's called takanas hashavim. And they said if you stole a beam, if you stole wood, you don't have to give back the wood. You just have to pay back the value of the wood. And that's what the Mechaber says here. Takanas chachamim, takanas hashavim, she'ein lebala eitzim ela demei eitzim belvad. That the owner of the wood, the one who you stole it from, he only gets the money for the wood. He no longer has a claim for the wood itself. Even though midaraisa he does have a claim for the wood itself, the Chachamim canceled out that claim. We know that the halacha is hefker, bezdin, hefker. Bezdin has the right, bezdin is authorized to go take ownership away from one person and give it to another person. So, okay, with their authority, the Chazal said, even though midaraisa, you really are mechuyev eishiv sagzela shagazal to return the beam, hefker, bezdin, hefker, the beam is now yours, and you could be yotzei tshuva by paying him for the beam. Therefore, says the Mechaber, let's now apply this to Hilchas Sukkah. You went ahead and you stole 2x4s. You put the 2x4s on top of your Sukkah to support your schach. If we have a problem over here of Sukkah Gzula, if the 2x4s are considered stolen, then maybe we have a Sukkah Gzula. We're not going to get into the technicalities over here of, in my scenario, the 2x4s are only a maimed for the schach. Is that a problem or is it not a problem? We could be talking about the plywood of the walls. You went there and you stole the plywood of the walls. Immaterial right now. My point is that if the materials that you stole are taka Gzula, because they belong to the other person and you have to return them to the other person, then it's a Sukkah Gzula and you're not Yaitza. But Takanas HaShavim says that you don't have to return it to the other person. Takanas HaShavim says that you now own the wood and you are going to pay him money. So now Takanas HaShavim says the materials are yours, it's no longer a Sukkah Gzula, and you're Yaitza with this Sukkah. So again, I'm just going to read the words quickly of the Mechaber again. The Mechaber said, "V'im gazal eitzim v'asa b'hem sukkah." If you stole wood and you made a sukkah out of it, "Af al pi shelo chibran v'lo shina b'hem klum," even though you did not build it into the sukkah. Now, what's the point of the Mechaber when the Mechaber says, "Af al pi shelo chibran"? Even though you didn't build it in. So if you take a look at the Biur Halacha, Dibra Maschil, Va'asa Mehem Sukkah Afa Pi Shaloi Chibran, the Chavetz Chaim explains what the point of the Mechaber is. Ritzayna Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say is, Shesikech Oisai B'ha'etzim. You stole wood, you stole branches, you stole bamboo, and you used it for schach. But you didn't screw the schach into the sukkah. You never built the bamboo into the binyan, into the structure. You stole bamboo and you laid it on top of your sukkah to use it as schach. V'hava amina, therefore you might have said, Takanas HaShavim doesn't apply over here. How did I explain Takanas HaShavim? You stole a microlamp beam, you built it into the extension of your house. Takanas HaShavim is there because Chazal were afraid you're going to say, I can't do V'heshev Zagzelish or Gazal. I can't go ahead and take my extension apart and return the microlamp beam. So they made Takanas HaShavim, you could pay for the beam. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you might think if you stole bamboo and you laid it on top of the sukkah, maybe Takanas HaShavim doesn't apply. Over here it's very easy to be Yaitzav V'heshev Zagzelish or Gazal. Just take the bamboo off and give it back. So you might have thought Takanas HaShavim doesn't apply. Kamash Malon the Mechaber. The Mechaber says, Afa Pi Shaloi Chibran, even though you didn't build it in, even though you weren't matriach, you didn't screw it to the structure, Takanas HaShavim still applies. V'hava abidat leishayich v'zeh Takanas HaShavim klal. Kamash Malon that Takanas HaShavim does apply. Now the question is why? Why Taka? Why does Takanas HaShavim apply over here if it's so simple to just take the bamboo off and give it back to the neighbor? I think the reason is found in a Rashi on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph in Sukkah. Rashi says, Mipnei Takanas Meirish. Rashi says that even though a Sukkah is only a Diras Aroi, even though a Sukkah is a flimsy, lightweight structure, there doesn't seem to be so much of a reason to apply Takanas HaShavim. Rashi says a fascinating thing. Rashi says that the chashivus of the mitzvah of Sukkah, let me see if I could just find the Rashi for you very, very quickly, so I could give it to you in Rashi's beautiful words. Rashi, the wordsmith of the Torah HaKadoshah, says Rashi, we don't say Ein kan hefsid meruba, that there's no great loss over here by returning these branches. V'yaster sukkasai, so let him just break the sukkah and return the material. The mitzvah mashvile kol shiva kebinyan kva. The mitzvah of sukkah turns the sukkah into a binyan kva. The chashivas of the mitzvah, and we've seen this concept already previously a few times. The chashivas of the mitzvah gives the binyan of the sukkah a certain kvius, and therefore Takanas HaShavim does apply, and since Takanas HaShavim applies, the material belongs to you. So again, the Mechaber said on the second line, Afa Pi Shaloi Chibran, even though you didn't attach the bamboo to the sukkah, V'lo shina b'hem klum, and you didn't make any improvement to the material. What's the point of that? Well, the point is, if you made improvements to the material, then maybe you were kind in the material with shinoi maisa. Says the Mechaber, I'm telling you, even if you weren't kind in the materials with shinoi maisa, it's still not considered gzula. Why? Because of Takanas HaShavim. Yotza, you are Yotza, she Takanas Chachamim, she'en l'balo eitzim, elo demei eitzim belvad. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Tezvav. Yotza she Takanas kein tzarich loimar, you have to put in that letter shin. Ritzayna lomar, what the Mechaber wants to say over here is, after midaraisa psulahi, despite the fact that midoraisa this sukkah is really possible because the materials are really stolen. And this is true even if you decided you're going to pay for the materials. You stole the plywood, you stole the bamboo, and you said, it's okay, I'm going to pay my neighbor. Maybe you go over to the neighbor, you say, I'll give you the money. The neighbor says, I don't want the money, I want the bamboo. But you say, no, I'm using the bamboo, I'll pay you the money. Midaraisa, this is stolen material. Because midaraisa, you have to break apart your sukkah, you have to give him back the bamboo. If it's a microland beam in your house, midaraisa, you have to destroy your extension and give him back the beam. Nevertheless, kvar tikdu chachamim, the chachamim made a takana. Kedei sheyirtzu b'nei adam lasis tshuva, to encourage and to enable people to do tshuva. They made a takana she'ena mishalem loy elo demei eitzim v'dayon, that you're only mechuyev to pay the value of the wood, and that is sufficient, and you're yotze your tshuva on gezela. V'yesh kayach b'yadam lasai, and the chachamim have the authority to do this. Shehefker bezdin hefker, because we know the halacha hefker bezdin hefker. Bezdin is authorized to go change ownership of property from one person to another. Imkain, it then follows. Imkain memela, it then follows. Im yishalim loy demei eitzim. If, now this is very tricky. The phraseology of the Chavetz Chaim over here is tricky. Im yishalim loy demei eitzim. If the one who stole the bamboo is going to pay for the wood, heavy achakach shaloi mamish. When he pays for it, I'm teaching it the way the Chavetz Chaim writes it. When he pays for it, it's actually going to be his. It's going to be 100% his, the bamboo. And therefore now, the one who stole the bamboo is allowed to sit in this sukkah, the gam levarech aleh, and he's allowed to make a bracha on this sukkah. He can make a leishev basukah. Now, I said that the phraseology of the Chavetz Chaim is tricky. Why? Because here's the question. Ruvain stole the bamboo from Shimon. Ruvain put the bamboo on top of his sukkah. We're saying now that because of takanas hashavim, the bamboo is his, and he could sit in the sukkah, he could eat the sukkah, be yotze sukkah, and he could even make a bracha on the sukkah. Did he pay yet? If he paid, so okay, like the Chavetz Chaim just said, im yishalom loy demei eitzim, have a achakach shaloi mamish. It's going to be 100% his. So are we talking about a case where he already paid? No, we're going to see later. We're talking about even if he did not already pay. Takanas hashavim makes the material the possession of the one who stole it, even before he actually pays. As long as he has not decided that he is not going to pay. If the fellow decided, I'm not paying, then he's a gazlan, then takanas hashavim doesn't apply, then this material is gazal b'yadai, and then pashtus he's not yotze. But even if he didn't pay yet, if he's planning on paying, or at least if he hasn't decided that he's not going to pay, it's already his. Now how do I know that? Well, let's read weiter. Ois cut and tez zayin, demei eitzim. The victim of the theft only gets the value of the wood. Says the Chavetz Chaim, v'im eina roitze loses demei eitzim, if he does not want to pay for the wood, if he has decided that he's not going to pay for the wood, loy yotza, then you're not yotza, because then takanas hashavim doesn't apply. So what's the Chavetz Chaim saying here? The Chavetz Chaim saying is, if you decided that you're not paying, if you don't want to pay, then you're not yotza. But if you do want to pay, but you didn't pay yet, then you are yotza. Now, lest you have any question whether or not I'm right, let's take a look at the Sharet Tzion, Ois Kat Chav Beis. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Magen Avram Usha'are Rishonim, he brings down this halacha that if you're not going to pay, you're not yotze. He brings it down from the Magen Avram and other Achronim. V'im oimer sheyitein adamim. Let's say he says that he is going to pay. Rak shematcheyu miyoyim el yoyim. But he keeps on stalling. Yeah, I'm gonna pay. Shimon keeps on coming to Reuven, you owe me money for the bamboo. Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna pay. Do you take PayPal? Do you take Venmo? How about Zelle? Yeah, sure, no problem, I'm gonna pay. A week later, you didn't pay me yet. Yeah, my Zelle was down. PayPal, my internet was down. Cash, who uses that? Yeah. Says the Sharit Tzion, you're Yoitza. Rak shamatcheu miyom el yom, Yotza. Clearly he didn't pay yet, but you're still Yoitza. Dal kol panim harehu min hashavim. Because this guy is a guy who still intends on doing tshuva. He's being marater. Today I don't have the money. I'm waiting for the next paycheck to come in. I'm waiting for the gemach loan to come in. I know I have to pay him. I couldn't pay him yet. But we still want to encourage this person to do tshuva. So Takanas HaShavim applies to him. And once Takanas HaShavim applies to somebody, the material belongs to him. Fascinating. Okay, now we go weiter in the Mechaber. And now finally we come to the case where a Sukkah Gzula is taka a problem and a Sukkah Gzula is possible. 3 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch by the Ois Katan Yud Zayin for the Mishnah Berurah. Avalim gozal sukkah ha'asuya b'roish ha'sfina oy b'roish ha'agola. Let's say you steal a sukkah that is built on top of a ship, totally portable. A sukkah, you got a pop-up sukkah on the top of a yacht, on the deck of a yacht, or you have a pop-up sukkah on top of a Suburban. V'yashav ba, you steal the pop-up sukkah and you sit in it and you eat. La yotza, you are not yotza the mitzvah of sukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah. He's cutting your time. Avalim gazal sukkah. If you stole a fully portable sukkah, da'az he atzma nigzeles. It's a portable item, which, like any other portable item, it is stealable. It's something that if you stole it, it's stolen property. If it's something that's mechubar l'karka, karka ain't an exelis, so the sukkah ain't an exelis. But if it's a portable item is stealable. Ve'ena lov lahachzir damim, and now you don't pay money. There's no takanas hashavim over here of paying money. It's like any other thing that you steal, you have to return it be'en. There's no takana over here, takanas hashavim. Takanas hashavim is a takana that the Chazal made strictly by something that's mechuber. It's built into a binyan. But over here, you have a portable sukkah. There's no takanas hashavim, and it's not karka that we should say karka ain't an exelis. So you can't get away with just paying money, and we'll say that you're going to pay the money, but right now the sukkah is yours. You have to return the item that you stole. They ain't got takanas hashavim. Sha'arei lo tarach aleh livnoisa. This is not something that you are matriach to build. Takanas hashavim is, I put in tircha to install the microlamp in my house. You didn't spend money on this. Takanas hashavim again is, I paid contractors to go build a house. I can't go ahead and tear it down now. That's not what happened over here. You walked over, you took somebody's pop-up sukkah, you put it up by you, and you went and you used it. So you stole an item, you got to return the item. That's mamish sukkah gzula, hilkach gezulahi. And in this case, it's cutting yudches lo yotzi, you're not yotze. Tiksiv chag asuka is tasa lecha shivas yamim. This is the drasha that we make. Chag asuka is tasa lecha shivas yamim limud gzula doli have lecha. This comes to be mind a sukkah gzula. Or mashma b'divrei Magen Avram. The implication of the Magen Avram is the af acherim sheyashvuva gam kein lo yotzi yidei chayvasam. If Reuven stole the sukkah, and now he's using it, and now he sees a bunch of fine Yidden outside who are looking for a place to eat their sandwich, he calls them over, sure, come in, eat in my sukkah. The implication of the Magen Avram is that those people are also not Yotze. Why? Because the sukkah is a sukkah gzula. Now the truth is that the Magen Avram is taking this halacha from the halacha by Daled Minim. The halacha by Daled Minim is, if Reuven goes and steals a lulav and esrig, and then he gives it to somebody else on the first day to use the lulav and esrig, the second person is not yotze. Just the same way Reuven is not yotze. If Reuven gives it to somebody else, that other person is also not yotze. But the Mishnah Berurah says right over here, V'la'niyas daiti tzarich iyun b'zeh. Chavetz Chaim says in his humble opinion, this halacha of the Magen Avrams needs a lot of iyun. V'ayin bir halacha, and he sends it to the bir halacha, dibur amascha lo yotza. And just to give you an idea of what the Chavetz Chaim says over here in the bir halacha, Chavetz Chaim says, I don't see the dimyon, I don't see the comparison between over here by Hilchos Sukkah and over there by the halach of Daled Minim. Over there by the halach of Daled Minim, if Ruvain steals the Daled Minim, he can't be Yaitza. Why can't he be Yaitza? Because the pasuk says, "L'kachtem lochem b'yom harishon." The Daled Minim have to be yours. Ruvain stole it; it's not his. He can't be Yaitza. If Ruvain gives it to Shimon, Shimon also can't be Yaitza. Why can't Shimon be Yaitza? Is it because it's Daled Minim Gezula? No, it's because it's not lochem. That's why he can't be Yaitza. The same way Shimon can't be Yaitza, let's say Ruvain on the first day of Sukkot would give Shimon his Daled Minim as a she'ela, as a loan. He's not giving it to him. He's not being makdeh to him. He says, I'll lend it to you. So Shimon's not Yaitza. Why? Because he's not being Yaitza lachem. So the reason why Shimon is not Yaitza by the Daled Minim, if Ruvain stole the Daled Minim, is simply because Shimon is not fulfilling the requirement of lachem. How could you make a dimyon between that and Sukkah? Over here, when Ruvain steals the portable Sukkah, Ruvain's not Yaitza, not because it's not his. He's not Yaitza because it's a Sukkah Gzula, because it's a stolen Sukkah. That's why he's not Yaitza. As far as Shimon sitting in the Sukkah, says the Chavetz Chaim, I'm not sure if the problem of Gezula applies to the person who didn't steal it. The person, Shimon, who didn't steal it, he doesn't have a requirement of lecha that the sukkah has to be his. By him, maybe he has the same halacha as a sukkah she'ula. It's a sukkah that's not his, but by me is it a stolen sukkah? I didn't steal it. So the Chavetz Chaim goes back and forth. He says, not so sure, but he definitely says it's tzarich iyun. Okay. Let's go a little bit weiter. I know we're getting a little bit long, but I really want to finish the Siman. Let's go a little bit weiter. Second line for the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch, the words of the Ramah. Hagah. Here we have a very interesting case that builds on all of the concepts that we've learned so far over here in this beautiful Siman. Says the Ramah, for hu hadin, you want to know another interesting case where you're not yoytze in a sukkah because it's a sukkah gzula? Im Ruvain bana sukkah bekarka Shimon. Very interesting. Ruvain didn't have enough room in his backyard for his sukkah. You know, he doesn't want to give up his whole backyard for his sukkah. He wants the kids to be able to run around and play. Shimon has a big backyard. So Ruvain took his sukkah. He took his nice lighter sukkah. I'm not picking on lighters. It could be sukkah outlet. It could, you know, not picking sides here. He took his beautiful sukkah and he put it up in Shimon's backyard. Shimon comes out, and guess what? Somebody else's 16 by 16 sukkah is sitting in his backyard. So V'hu did him Ruvain bought a sukkah b'karka Shimon. Ruvain went there and built a sukkah on Shimon's land. Shimon took off his Ruvain. So Shimon goes ahead and evicts Ruvain and says, get out of here. But, hey, wait a second. It's a 16 by 16 sukkah. That's very nice. The Gazal Sukkasai Abenuya b'karka Shaloi. So he steals the sukkah that's built on his land. Shimon stole Ruvain's sukkah that's built on Shimon's own land. So he evicted Ruvain. He feels that he's in the right. Ruvain went ahead and built a sukkah on Shimon's land. Shimon throws him out of the sukkah. But he didn't throw the sukkah out. He left the sukkah in his backyard. And now he says, hey, wait a second. Beautiful sukkah. Nicer than mine. He goes ahead and he uses the sukkah. Lo yatzaba. You're not yoitza. Shimon is not yoitza. Ve'ein kan takanas hashavim. There's no takanas hashavim here. You're not going to say that the sukkah now belongs to Shimon because of takanas hashavim, and he only has to pay Ruvain the value of the sukkah. Again, for the same reason. Shimon didn't work to build a sukkah. He didn't spend money to build a sukkah that we should apply takanas hashavim, that's when takanas hashavim applies. We made takanas hashavim to help the guy who worked and spent money, and therefore he can't do tshuva because he can't undo all of his work and give up on all of his expenses. We make takanas hashavim. But over here, there's no takanas hashavim. Reuven went, took his sukkah, built his sukkah on Shimon's land. There's no takanas hashavim over here to say that Shimon is kind of the sukkah and only has to pay the value of the sukkah. So there's no takanas hashavim. I don't know what happened over there for a second, but everything seems to be working again. So there's no takanas hashavim over here to say that somehow Shimon should be kind of the sukkah. So says the Ramah, in this case, you're not Yoitza. Now, the Chavetz Chaim is going to attack right away, and the Chavetz Chaim is going to say, wait a second, you might be thinking that there's a very obvious problem over here. What happened to what the Mechaber said in Siv Gimel? The Mechaber said at the beginning of Siv Gimel, if you go ahead and you throw somebody out of his sukkah, right? Reuven built a sukkah in his own backyard. Shimon goes into Reuven's backyard, into Reuven's sukkah, evicts Reuven and his family, and he uses Reuven's sukkah. In that case, the Mechaber said, you are Yoitza. It's not a sukkah gzula. Why? Because karka ain't exelis. You can't steal karka. And the sukkah is mechubal karka. It has the same din as karka. Karka ain't an exelis, so the sukkah is not an exelis. It's not a sukkah gzula, and Shimon is Yoitza. Why don't we say the same thing over here? Shimon evicted Reuven from his sukkah. Now, it's true that the sukkah is built in Shimon's backyard, but Shimon evicted Reuven from the sukkah. Why don't we say karka ain't an exelis? The sukkah should have a din of karka. Karka ain't an exelis. It's not a sukkah gzula. So the answer is very simple. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting your test. Lo yotzaba v'lo damya lahanal b'siv gimel. This is not similar to the halacha in Siv Gimel, where Shimon evicted Reuven from Reuven's sukkah built in Reuven's own backyard. Why? The hasam hakarka becheskas ba'aleha oimedes ve'ein an exelis. Because over there we have the concept of karka ein an exelis. If Shimon goes into Reuven's backyard and evicts Reuven from Reuven's sukkah built in Reuven's backyard, karka ein an exelis. You can't steal Reuven's karka. It's becheskas ba'aleha harishayim heim oimdim. The karka still belongs to Reuven. Just because you go into Reuven's backyard and you shove him out, the real estate still belongs to Reuven. The sukkah is mechubal karka. The sukkah still belongs to Reuven. V'chal hamechubal karka harehi kekarka. Turning to Kuf Aleph Beis. Masha einken hacha. But that's not true here in our case, where Shimon evicted Reuven from a sukkah that Reuven built in Shimon's backyard. Over here, you can't apply the same logic. Over here, the sukkah is not in Reuven's karka. The sukkah is on Shimon's karka. Over here, you can't apply karka in an exelis because Shimon didn't try to steal the karka. The karka is Shimon's. It's built on Shimon's land. So by evicting Reuven from the sukkah, was he stealing the land that the sukkah is built on? No, it's his land. So he's not stealing the land, he's only stealing the sukkah. So then you can't apply karka ein an exelis. And then the sukkah taka is gezula, and since the sukkah is gezula, you're not yotzim. Ken lagazal elo ha'etzim v'loy hakarka v'hevi gezula. Now, the last thing that I want to point out, just because I think it's so critical in terms of what we discussed today, is I want to point you to Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, Bir Halacha Dibur HaMaschil Ha'asuya B'Rosh Ha'agala. One of the cases that the Mechaber gave where you can't be yotzei with a sukkah gzula is you stole a portable sukkah. We spoke about a sukkah ha'asuya b'rosh ha'agala, a sukkah that's built on top of a wagon. Somebody built a sukkah on top of a wagon. The reason the Mechaber gave that case is, again, because in Siv Gimel, we spoke about a sukkah that's mechubal karka. You can't steal it because karka ain't an exelis. Over here, the Mechaber wants to show you a case where you cannot apply karka ain't an exelis because the sukkah is not built on the karka. The sukkah is built b'rosh ha'agala. So it's metaltalin. It's a fully portable item. Therefore, it's fully stealable. So if you steal it and you use it, it's a sukkah gzula. Now, how about, I'm sure many of you wondered, what is this sukkah that's mechuber l'karka? What if the sukkah is built on the ground, but it's not mechuber l'karka? So the Bir Halacha says over here, Dibra Maskala Asuya B'Rosh Ha'agala, for hu adin sukkah ha'benuya al garbe karka, The same thing would apply to a sukkah that's built on the karka. Ve'ena mechuberes klal lakarka, but it's not mechuber to the karka in any way. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that also would be considered a portable sukkah. So fiberglass sukkah built on a backyard patio, where you don't drill it into the ground, you might not even tie it down with stakes and attach it to the ground, it's just sitting on the ground. What is that? Do you apply the concept of sukkah, of karka in an exelis or not? I think it might depend how heavy it is. I think that might be part of the answer. It's something I want to research a little bit more. The choshken al galgalim, certainly if you have a sukkah on wheels, sheyachal taltal mimakom lamakom teshayich bagzela. But this is why when I was giving the shir, I said the case of the pop-up sukkah. Pop-up sukkah is certainly a portable item. A lightweight 4x4 canvas sukkah certainly has no concept of mechuber karka. If you have a 20 by 20 fiberglass sukkah that's sitting on the ground, is that mechuber karka? Let me take a look. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rishon should send Yeshua Sefuas and Parnasa to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias God Tzedek b'Meher v'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.